The night my wife handed me a spare key and said, "Don't ask me anything yet," I still believed I knew every secret my marriage could hold. I had been married to my wife for 12 years. I thought I understood the architecture of her heart, the way I understood contract law, by the letter, and by the quiet exceptions she'd carved out for the people she loved. But that Tuesday night, when I came home from the office and found a stranger's shoes lined up by our front door, worn thin at the heel, I understood there was a whole wing of my wife's life I had never been given a key to. "Her name is Robin," my wife said, standing in the hallway like a sentry guarding a door I couldn't see. "She's staying in the guest room, and I need you to trust me on this. No questions. Not yet. I am a lawyer. I have built an entire career on asking questions for a living. But standing in my own home that night, looking at my wife's face, I understood for the first time that some questions are dangerous to ask before you're ready for the answer. I did not know yet that the woman sleeping down the hall from my children would change the way I understood my wife, my marriage, and the quiet debts of the heart that nobody ever talks about at the dinner table. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Her name was Robin Castro. That much I learned by breakfast the next morning, mostly because I overheard my daughter, Hazel, asking her sweetly why she didn't have any suitcases, only a backpack and a grocery bag. Robin looked to be somewhere in her 30s, with the kind of stillness in her shoulders that I had only ever seen in clients who were bracing for bad news in a courtroom. She flinched when the dishwasher door slammed. She sat with her back to the wall in every room she entered. And every time my phone buzzed on the counter, her eyes found it before mine did. My wife would not tell me who Robin was to her, how long they had known each other, or why a woman neither of my children had ever met before was suddenly sleeping under our roof with the guest room door locked from the inside. 3 questions sat in my chest like stones all that week. Who was Robin Castro really? And what was she running from? What part of my wife's life had she kept sealed off from me for over a decade of marriage? And most of all, if my wife could hide something this large, this carefully, for this long, what else didn't I know about the woman I thought I understood completely? I noticed small things that first week that I couldn't yet fit together. Robin kept her backpack zipped and within arm's reach, even at the dinner table. She thanked my wife for the smallest kindnesses, a second cup of coffee, a spare toothbrush, with a gratitude that felt disproportionate, the kind you only see in people who have learned not to expect anything to be given freely. And twice that week, I caught my wife standing at the front window after dark, watching the street for a long moment before drawing the curtains, as though she were counting cars that hadn't arrived yet. My name is Nathan Whitaker. I'm 37 years old, an attorney at a firm called Hale & Griffith here in Omaha, Nebraska, where I split my time between corporate contracts and the kind of family law cases that keep me up at night for reasons that have nothing to do with billable hours. My wife Emma and I have been married for 12 years. We have 2 children, our son Silas, who is 10 and treats every new fact about the world like it needs to be cross-examined, and our daughter Hazel, who is 7 and has never met a stranger she didn't immediately try to befriend. My mother-in-law, Marjorie Sanford, lives 20 minutes away and has never once, in 12 years, let me forget that she thinks Emma could have done better. I tell people that my wife and I have an unusually honest marriage. We don't hide credit card statements from each other. We don't lie about how we spend our weekends. When Emma is angry with me, she tells me directly, usually within the hour. That was the version of my marriage I would have sworn to under oath, right up until the week Robin Castro appeared in our guest room. What I didn't know, what I would only learn in pieces over the following days, was that before Emma and I ever met, back when she was 24 and working nights at a diner to pay off her nursing school loans, she had spent 2 years volunteering at a women's shelter on the edge of the city. It was not something she talked about, not because she was ashamed of it, but because of what it had cost her to walk away from it. Emma's aunt, her mother's younger sister, had died when Emma was 19, not from illness, from a husband who had promised, for 11 years, that he would change. Emma had watched that unravel from a distance too far to help, and she had never forgiven herself for not seeing it soon enough, not saying enough, not doing enough. So when she was old enough to volunteer somewhere that mattered, she chose a shelter intake desk on Tuesday and Thursday nights, and she stayed there until the year before we met, when the grief of it finally became too heavy to carry alongside nursing school and a full course load. She never told me the full weight of any of this. I knew, in a general way, that she'd lost an aunt young. I knew she cared deeply about domestic violence causes, that she donated every year around the holidays, that she got quiet during certain news segments and changed the channel. I had filed all of that under the ordinary weather of my wife's inner life, until the week a woman named Robin Castro needed somewhere to disappear to for a while, and Emma, without a single moment of hesitation, opened our guest room door. I should have recognized the foreshadowing, looking back. 2 weeks before Robin arrived, Emma had gone quiet during dinner when a segment about a stalking case came on the local news. She had excused herself early from Marjorie's birthday lunch to take a phone call in the driveway, and when she came back inside, her mascara had been freshly reapplied in a way that told me she'd been crying. I had asked if everything was all right. She had said yes, just tired, and I had believed her, because 12 years of marriage teaches you which lies are protecting you and which lies are protecting someone else. I did not yet know which kind this one was. I think, looking back, that part of what made it so easy for Emma to keep this from me was that I had built my own image of her the way I build a case file, organized, tabbed, complete. We met in law school, at a study group for a contracts course neither of us particularly loved. She was 2 years into her nursing degree by then, already exhausted in the specific way that comes from working nights and studying days, and I remember thinking, even in that first conversation, that she carried herself like someone who had already survived something I couldn't see the shape of. I told myself that was just her nature, steady, unshakable, the kind of calm that made her good in a crisis. I never once asked what had taught her to be that way. 12 years later, I still hadn't asked the right question. Even Marjorie, who has spent a decade insisting Emma married beneath her expectations, has never once managed to unearth this particular piece of her daughter's history. And Marjorie prides herself on knowing everything. That alone should have told me how carefully Emma had sealed this part of her life away, and how much it must have cost her, every single year, to keep it sealed. The Tuesday it happened, I came home a little after 7 to find the driveway crowded with an unfamiliar sedan, its back seat piled high with black trash bags instead of luggage. Inside, my son Silas met me at the door with the particular wide-eyed urgency of a 10-year-old who has been sitting on information all day. "Dad," he said, "there's a lady in the guest room, and Mom told us not to talk about her at school." I found Emma in the kitchen, moving with the brisk, contained energy she gets when she's trying to look calmer than she feels. On the counter sat a paper grocery bag with a woman's toiletries spilling out of the top, and beside it, folded with more care than the rest, a child's stuffed rabbit with one ear, chewed soft from years of use, though Robin, as far as I could tell, had come alone. "Emma," I said, "whose rabbit is that?" She did not answer the question. Instead, she took my hand, walked me into the hallway out of earshot of the kids, and said the words that would sit with me for the rest of that week. "Her name is Robin. She needs somewhere safe to stay for a little while. I am not going to tell you the details tonight, Nathan, and I need you to be okay with that. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment, because the honest version isn't flattering. My first thought was not concern for a stranger in my home. My first thought was a cold, fast suspicion that my wife was covering for someone, an affair she was helping conceal, a debt she'd co-signed without telling me, a legal problem she thought I'd judge her for. 12 years of practicing family law will do that to a person. You start reading every silence as evidence. You're asking me to let a stranger sleep down the hall from our children," I said, "and you won't tell me why. I'm asking you to trust that I wouldn't do that if it put them in danger," Emma said. Her voice didn't rise, but something in it went very still, the way it does right before she says something she's rehearsed. "I have known Robin for 11 years, Nathan. Longer than I've known you, in some ways. I owe her something I can't explain right now. Please, just this once, don't cross-examine me." I let it go that night, mostly because Hazel came barreling down the hallway asking whether the guest room lady liked pancakes, and the moment for pressing further closed itself like a door. But I noticed, over dinner, that Robin ate with her chair angled toward the exit, that she flinched hard when Silas dropped his fork, and that when my phone buzzed against the table, her eyes cut to it before mine did, fast and involuntary, the reflex of someone who had spent a long time waiting for a particular call. By the end of that first week, 3 things had become clear to me. Robin never left the house during daylight hours. She refused, gently but firmly, to be in any photograph, including the one Hazel tried to take of her and the family dog. And every night around 11, after the kids were asleep, Emma locked the guest room door from the outside, not the inside, and slid a folded note underneath it before going to bed. One evening that same week, I tried a different approach. Instead of pressing Emma again, I sat down across from Robin at the kitchen table while Emma was upstairs putting Hazel to bed, and I simply asked her, gently, whether she was safe. Robin looked at me for a long moment, long enough that I thought she wouldn't answer at all. "I'm safer than I was a week ago," she said finally. "That's the honest answer. I know you're a lawyer. I know you probably want a cleaner one than that. I don't have one to give you yet. You don't owe me an explanation," I told her, though at the time, I wasn't entirely sure I meant it. "No," Robin said, "but your wife does owe you her trust, and she's spending some of it on me right now. I want you to know I don't take that lightly." It was the closest thing to a confirmation I got that week, that whatever this was, it ran deeper than a favor between acquaintances, and that Robin herself understood exactly what she was asking of my marriage by being there. Later that same night, Emma found me still sitting at the table long after Robin had gone to the guest room. She didn't ask what we'd talked about. She just sat down across from me, tired in a way I hadn't seen from her in years, and said, "I know this is hard on you. I know it doesn't feel fair that I get to know everything and you get to know nothing." I told her it wasn't about fairness. It was about not recognizing the shape of my own marriage for a few days, and not knowing yet whether that was temporary or permanent. She reached across the table and took my hand, and for the first time since Robin's arrival, I let myself believe that whatever this was, it was something we would get through together, rather than something that was quietly pulling us apart. I told myself I was imagining the tension. I told myself a lot of things that week. None of them turned out to be true. By the second week, I had stopped telling myself Robin's arrival was a temporary favor between old friends, because favors between old friends don't usually come with a woman flinching at every unfamiliar car that slows down on our street. I did what I do for a living. I started building a case, quietly, the way I would for a client whose story didn't add up yet. I ran a background search on the name Robin Castro. Nothing alarming. No warrants, no debts, just a work history that stopped abruptly 4 years ago after a decade as a paralegal in Lincoln. I found a single social media account, dormant since that same year, its last post a photograph of a wedding ring with the caption cropped so short it told me nothing. And one night, while looking for a phone charger in the hallway closet, I found a shoebox at the back of Emma's side that I had genuinely never noticed in 12 years. An old shelter volunteer badge with Emma's photograph on it, her hair shorter, her smile thinner, and a laminated newsletter beneath it, dated 14 years back, with a grainy photograph of a fundraiser table where a much younger Emma stood beside a woman I now recognized, older, but unmistakably, as Robin. If you've ever found a piece of your spouse's history you were never shown on purpose, you understand the particular vertigo of it. Not anger exactly, but the sense that the ground under a marriage you thought was solid has quietly been a bridge the whole time, and you're only now finding out how far down the water is. I want to pause here and ask you honestly, if you like this story so far, tap that like button, because it genuinely helps other people going through something similar find their way to this channel. I confronted Emma with the badge that same night, not as an accusation, but because I couldn't carry the not knowing any further without it curdling into resentment I didn't want in my marriage. She sat down at the kitchen table, turned the badge over once in her hands, like she was greeting an old, difficult friend, and told me the truth in pieces, the way people do. When the truth has been sealed for so long, it comes out stiff at the joints. She told me about her aunt. She told me about 2 years of Tuesday and Thursday night shifts at the intake desk of a shelter that had since closed, about how Robin had walked through those doors 9 years ago with a broken wrist and a story that didn't match her injury, and how the two of them had stayed close in the careful, encrypted way that people from that world stay close. Burner numbers, coded check-ins, birthdays remembered, but addresses never shared. She told me Robin had rebuilt a life in Lincoln under a name close enough to her own to answer to, had married again, quietly, to a man named Derek Rhodes, and that for 3 years it had looked, from the outside, like a genuine second chance. 2 weeks ago, she called me from a gas station bathroom, Emma said. She said Derek had found her old phone records. She said he knew things he shouldn't know, and she didn't have anywhere else to go that he wouldn't think to check first. Emma's hands were shaking slightly around the badge. I couldn't tell you the details, Nathan, because the fewer people who know exactly where she is, the safer she is. That's not a rule I made up. That's a rule that keeps women alive. I sat with that for a long moment, feeling something in my chest that was equal parts shame and awe. Shame for the ugly, small suspicions I'd been quietly nursing about my own wife, and awe at the 12 years of a woman's grief and quiet, unglamorous service that I had simply never been shown, because it had never occurred to her that I needed to see it to believe it was real. "You should have told me sooner," I said, finally. "I know," Emma said. "I was afraid that if I told you everything, you'd want to help. And Nathan, you're a lawyer. You think in paper trails and protective orders. Robin needs quiet more than she needs paperwork right now." For a day or two after that conversation, I genuinely believed the hardest part was behind us. I was wrong about that too, though not in the way I expected. The following afternoon, going through the mail, I found an envelope addressed to Emma from a Lincoln law office I didn't recognize, and for one uncomfortable hour, I let myself imagine the worst, that Emma herself was somehow named in whatever legal trouble Robin's marriage had become. I nearly called the firm directly before Emma got home. When she finally opened it in front of me, it turned out to be nothing more than a routine notice from a Shelters Associated legal aid clinic, a form Robin had asked Emma to help her file months earlier and long since forgotten about, unrelated to Derek entirely. It was a small, humbling reminder that not every locked door in this story was hiding what I assumed it was, and that my instinct to treat every unexplained detail as evidence of betrayal was its own kind of blind spot. My mother-in-law, Marjorie, added her own pressure to that week without meaning to help at all. She called twice, asking pointed questions about the woman living in our house, having heard about Robin's second hand from Hazel during a Sunday visit, and made it clear she suspected Emma of everything from financial trouble to a secret half-sister she'd never disclosed. "You tell that girl," Marjorie said to me on the phone, in the tone she reserves for pronouncements she considers final, "that a marriage built on secrets doesn't stay standing." I didn't tell Emma about that call until much later. Some pressures, I decided, were mine alone to carry that week. I didn't argue with her that night. But 3 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, when the guest room door had been left unlocked for the first time since Robin arrived, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone in her lap, staring at a text message that had just come through from an unknown number. It read only, "I know where you're staying now. Tell your friend's husband I said hello." If you're finding this story compelling so far, go ahead and drop a comment below, letting me know what you would have done in my place. I read every single one, and it genuinely shapes which stories I tell next. Robin's face had gone the color of old paper. "He follows people's tagged photos," she said quietly, before I could ask. "Someone at Hazel's school posted a picture from the science fair last week. My hand was in the background of it. Just my hand. That's all he needed." That was the moment the case stopped being a private family matter and became, in every sense of the word, mine to help solve. I called an old friend that same night, a detective named Yvette Marquez who I'd worked with years earlier on a pro bono custody case, back when she was still walking a beat instead of running an investigations unit. I laid out what I knew: the name Derek Rhodes, the 4-year-old employment gap, the text message, the flinching, the locked door every night, and asked her, off the record, whether any of it matched a pattern she recognized. It matched more than I expected. Derek Rhodes, it turned out, was already known to law enforcement in Lincoln under a different but related complaint. A prior girlfriend who had filed for a protective order 2 years before Robin ever married him, later withdrawn under circumstances Yvette described, carefully, as common in cases like this. There was no active warrant. There was nothing that would have stopped him from driving to Omaha that same night if he wanted to. "I want to be honest with you, Nathan," Yvette told me over the phone. "Guys like this don't usually knock on the front door. They wait until the house feels safe again, until everyone's guard is down." That text wasn't a threat to act tonight. It was a threat to remind her he still can, whenever he decides to. Yvette also told me something that reframed the entire situation for me. Something Robin herself hadn't volunteered. In the months before she disappeared, Robin had quietly started her own paper trail. An email to a coworker documenting a bruise she'd explained away as a fall. A receipt for a motel stay 2 towns over that Derek never knew about. A single photograph of a cracked phone screen, time-stamped the same night he claimed she'd dropped it herself. None of it had been enough, on its own, to get a protective order granted before she left. Together, Yvette said, it was exactly the kind of pattern that made juries and judges stop asking whether a woman was exaggerating and start asking why nobody had listened sooner. We didn't have to wait long to find out how right Yvette was about the rest of it. I remember hanging up the phone that night and standing in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the ordinary sounds of my house, the dishwasher finishing its cycle, Silas negotiating with Emma over 10 more minutes before lights out, Hazel humming something tuneless down the hall. It struck me, standing there, how thin the membrane really is between an ordinary evening and the kind that ends up rewriting what you thought you knew about the people you love. I did not sleep well that night, and neither, I suspect, did Emma. 2 nights later, a little after 10, our doorbell camera caught a sedan idling at the end of our street for 11 minutes before pulling away. The next morning, it was parked in front of our house directly, and a man matching Derek Rhodes's driver's license photo was standing on our porch, one hand braced against the frame of our front door, asking, in a voice pitched for a neighbor's benefit, calm and reasonable and utterly rehearsed, whether his wife was inside, because she'd left without a word and their families were worried sick about her. I answered the door myself. Emma stood just behind me with her hand pressed flat against my back, not pulling me inside, just anchoring herself to something solid. Robin, through the front window, had gone completely still in the hallway shadow, and for one long, terrible second, I understood exactly what my wife had been protecting for 2 weeks. Not a secret, but a woman's ability to simply keep breathing. I don't know a Robin, I said, which was, legally speaking, a defensible half-truth, since the woman in my guest room had checked in under a name that was not quite the one on Derek's marriage certificate. I think you have the wrong house. He didn't believe me. Men like that rarely do. But he also didn't have a warrant, a court order, or a single legal foothold to push past a locked door. And 12 years of practicing law has taught me exactly how far a man can lean into a doorway before he's committed a crime doing it. I held that line for the 90 seconds it took Emma, standing just out of his sight line, to finish the call she had already started dialing. To Detective Marquez, whose unmarked car was 4 minutes away, already in motion before Derek Rhodes had finished his sentence about worried families. Here is the reversal I didn't see coming, even after everything. When Detective Marquez arrived and asked Derek Rhodes to step away from the property, he didn't fight it, didn't raise his voice, didn't do any of the things I had braced myself for. He simply smiled, said he understood there had clearly been a misunderstanding, and got back in his car. And that composure, more than any outburst could have, was what finally convinced me Robin had been telling the truth about exactly the kind of danger she'd spent 9 years learning to read correctly, and I had only just met for the first time. What none of us knew yet was that Derek's calm departure wasn't restraint. It was a stall. 2 days earlier, unbeknownst to any of us, he had already filed a missing persons report in Lincoln, naming Robin under her married name, framing her disappearance as erratic and possibly dangerous to herself. A quiet, procedural trap designed to give any responding officer, anywhere she surfaced, a legal reason to hand her straight back to him before anyone thought to ask a single follow-up question. It was Yvette who caught it, cross-referencing the report that same afternoon out of professional habit more than suspicion. And it was that discovery, more than the doorstep confrontation, that turned the entire situation from a private favor between 2 old friends into something I could finally act on as an attorney, instead of just a nervous husband standing in his own doorway. I spent the next 2 days doing the one thing Emma had asked me, weeks earlier, not to rush into. I built the paper trail. Robin's own statement, notarized. The text message, preserved and time-stamped. The doorbell footage. A sworn account from Emma of 9 years of contact, of the burner phones and coded check-ins that had kept a woman alive long before I ever knew her name. I filed for an emergency protective order myself, first thing that Friday morning, and stood beside Robin in a courtroom I had walked into 100 times before, though never quite like this. The order was granted the same day. More importantly, the missing persons report was corrected within the hour, once Robin's own sworn statement was entered into the record, closing the one door that could have sent her back into danger through the sanctioned side of the law. Derek Rhodes was later charged with stalking and violating the terms of a no-contact provision he'd apparently forgotten still applied to him from his prior relationship, the one Yvette had flagged that first night. Standing in that courtroom, watching a judge sign an order with my own client's name, misspelled slightly because it wasn't her real one, I thought about all the cases I'd handled over the years where the paperwork came easily and the people never did. This was the reverse of nearly everything I usually saw. Robin didn't want a settlement, or a headline, or even an apology. She wanted, as she put it to the judge in a voice steadier than I expected, enough distance to stop flinching at car doors. The judge granted it without a single follow-up question, and I remember thinking that was its own kind of quiet justice, the kind that doesn't come with a verdict announcement, just a signature and a woman finally allowed to exhale. Robin left our guest room 11 days after she arrived, not for a shelter this time, but for a small apartment 2 states away, arranged through the same network Emma had quietly stayed connected to for over a decade. Before she left, she sat with Emma at our kitchen table for a long time, the two of them talking in the low, unhurried cadence of people who have earned the right to finally stop whispering. Then she found me in the hallway, on her way out, and said the only thing she'd ever really needed to say to me directly. "Your wife could have let go of me a long time ago," Robin said. "It would have been easier. Nobody would have blamed her. She didn't, and I don't think you understand yet what that costs a person, to keep showing up for someone for 9 years with nothing in it for herself." I understood it better than she knew. I had spent 2 weeks quietly suspecting my own wife of hiding something shameful, when what she had actually been hiding was 12 years of a debt paid in full, in silence, out of love for a woman who had nothing left to give her back except her life. That night, after the house had gone quiet, Emma and I sat on the back porch, the way we used to before the kids came along, and I asked her the question I probably should have asked 12 years earlier. I asked her what had made her walk away from the shelter work in the first place, back before we met. She was quiet for a while before she answered. "I thought if I stopped seeing it up close, it would stop being real," she said. "It never really worked. I just got quieter about carrying it. I didn't have a tidy response to that. I just held her hand and let the silence between us be the honest kind for once, instead of the kind that hides something." Robin still calls Emma most Sundays. I've picked up the phone a few times myself now, and the flinch I remember from those first nights in our guest room has softened, at least a little, into something closer to ease. Marjorie, for what it's worth, has never fully apologized for that phone call, though she did send Robin a card before she moved, which from my mother-in-law is its own quiet form of contrition. So here is the question I keep turning over, even now. How much of the people we love do we actually know? And how much of what we call honesty in a marriage is really just the part of the truth we've been shown permission to see? I've told you a lot of stories on this channel about the things I've discovered hiding in plain sight inside my own marriage. But this one changed something in how I see my wife. Permanently. In a way I don't think I've fully put into words until right now. I keep coming back to the 11 days Robin Castro spent under our roof, and to the 12 years my wife carried a debt of loyalty I never even knew existed, quietly, without ever asking me to understand it or thank her for it. I think about how easily I could have pushed harder that first week. How close I came to turning a woman's rescue into a courtroom cross-examination out of nothing but my own wounded pride. I want to know what you would have done in my position. If your spouse asked you to open your home to a stranger and told you, gently but firmly, not to ask why, would you have trusted them the way I eventually learned to, or would you have pushed the way I almost did? If this story moved you even a little, do me a favor and hit that like button before you go, because it tells this platform that stories like Robin's, and like my wife's, deserve to be found by more people who might need to hear them. Leave me a comment below and tell me honestly what you think about the choice my wife made to keep this secret from me for as long as she did. I read every single comment, and some of the best stories on this channel have come directly from things you've shared with me. If you know someone who's ever quietly carried a weight like this for a friend, send them this video. Sometimes the people doing the most good in someone else's life are the ones we'd least expect, and they rarely get the thank you they deserve. Turn on notifications for this channel so you never miss the next time my family's ordinary life turns out to be carrying something extraordinary underneath it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because there is always another story waiting behind a door in my house that I didn't know I needed a key to. And before you go, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching this from tonight. I love reading through those every single week, and it always reminds me how far these stories travel, and how many kitchen tables they end up sitting on besides my own. 12 years into this marriage, I thought I'd already learned every lesson it had to teach me. This one reminded me that love, real love, sometimes looks less like telling each other everything, and more like trusting each other with the things that can't be told yet. I'm grateful I finally understood the difference before it cost me something I couldn't get back. Thank you for sitting with this story tonight. I'll see you in the next one.